Welcome back to another episode of MYOG, Make or Modify Your Own Gear. And we today are going to be making these little guys. No, it's not a Vienna sausage. It's a fire starter. So please stick around. I do want to say one thing before we get started here, and that is a safety warning. You're going to be dealing with hot wax here. You should probably do it outside, for one, in case you have a spill. Then the cleanup isn't such an issue. Another thing, you should wear appropriate safety gear. Safety glasses, an apron, possibly gloves. You know, you only have one set of eyes. So please take appropriate measures. If you're not comfortable doing this, there is appropriate versions of this fire starter on the market that you can buy. All right, let's get started. All right, supplies we're going to need for this MYOG. You're going to need some wax. Here I've got Gulf wax that you can pick up at your local store, usually used in canning, food preservation, stuff like that. You could also use some old candles. A crayon for color. You want to add color to these for two reasons. One, so you can see how much of the cotton absorbs the wax, and two, if you drop it, it'll be easily visible in the woods. That's why I chose red. That, and I associate red with fire. Dental rounds. I got these off Amazon. There'll be links for all this stuff online if you can't find it locally. These dental rounds, I'm sure if you've ever been to a dentist, you've had them used on you. They shove them in the side of your mouth when they're working on you. This is the heart of our fire starter. Tools we're going to need for this MYOG. You need a heat source. I'm going to be using this hot plate as my heat source. You can use a camp stove or something like that, but if you use a camp stove, you need to use a double boiler for your wax. A double boiler setup like this, or a single pan if you're using an electric heat source. And tweezers. Use these to fish them in and out of the pot. And last but not least, you need a pan. I use this pan to set them in to let them air or dry and harden. You know, something disposable. If you don't have this, a piece of tin foil works just fine. All right, let's get started. Now, I got that single block of Gulf wax melted. In a package like this, you get 4 blocks, and I tend to do 1 block at a time. To that, I'm going to add one of these crayons. We're going to let that melt, and that's for color. One thing I didn't say about these crayons is you can also get them at like a lumber yard or even Harbor Freight. They're basically called like lumber crayons. It's what they mark on the end of lumber with. Alright. And you can see as that melts, it's turning it nice and red. But we've got the crayon in there, well melted. Everything's well combined. Nice even color. Alright, we are ready for the next step. So take your dental rounds, your dental dams, drop them in. And you'll see it's fuzzing or bubbling. Generally what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till it stops bubbling, right about, or slows down I should say, bubbling. And it's slowed down quite a bit. And I'm going to use my tweezers to pop that guy out. Give it a little shake. And drop it in our pan to cool off. And rinse and repeat until you're done. Every once in a while, you're going to want to swirl or stir your wax, and that's to keep the pigment evenly distributed, so that when you throw your dental dams in, they will absorb as much of the color as possible. If while doing this you end up with one that looks kind of like it didn't absorb much wax, like this one, you can always throw it back in and swirl it. Another helpful tip when you take these out, look at the ends. You'll see that they look wet, but then they start looking dull here. That looks really dull now. And I keep turning it back and forth like this, giving the wax that's saturated in the cotton time to solidify. And then I transfer it over to my sheet. We've used up most of the wax. There's barely any left in there, not even a millimeter in the pot, not even a 1/16 of an inch. Let me show you how many we made out of that single block out of here. This is our yield from one block of the Gulf wax and one crayon. 65 fire starters. That means if you use this full block and 4 crayons, you potentially could make 260 fire starters. Well, there's only one thing left to do. Let's go outside and test them out. As you can see, it floats. Let me really submerge it. Hold it all the way in the bottom. It still floats. Pull it out. Shake it off. I'm gonna wipe my hands so my hands ain't all wet. Bust it, exposing the fibers. Come on. There we go. Oh, wind got it. Wind today is my enemy. There we go. Lots of fibers. Of course it's gonna fight me. There we go. And as you can see, it will burn if it just wasn't so windy out here today. Wind is kicking my rear end. Waterproof, floats, will burn. Let's do a little burn test. Usually out of these fire starters I can get between 5 and 6.5 minutes. So, to use it, break it in half and you'll expose all these fibers. See that? All those wonderful fibers. Now you can go ahead and light those fibers with a match, a lighter, or what we're going to use here, our ferrule rod. And we're going to time it. And it's lit. Before the wind blows it out, I want to protect it. And the wind blew it out. Look at that. Did I call it or did I call it? Okay. Let me get in here and get it lit again. There we go. Gonna start my, gonna start a timer, and we're just gonna let this go. And that wind is pretty strong today. There we go. Get it a little bit more protected. It's still burning a little bit, but it's basically done. The wind's gonna knock it out here in any second. But you get an idea of what you get. Now, if you were to take your knife and move that around and expose more of the wax, it's probably underneath that. That's why it's smoldering. You'll get a little bit more. But it tapers off quite a bit. As you can see, 6.5 minutes, realistically. Another test I wanted to try with one of these is see if we can get it to burn like a candle, and if we get any kind of extended burn time that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to split this head. Okay. I'm trying to get some of the fibers right here exposed, because this is the side we're going to set on fire. That looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to melt. We got it like that. We're going to melt this bottom, stick it to the brick. Okay, I got that stuck in place. Now, see if we can get this lit like a candle. All right. Let's see how long that goes. So I'm going to call it, even though there's a small flame still down there, almost the same burn time. So it will kind of act like a candle slash torch for a little while. So, the only reason I'm doing this is I had a subscriber one time ask me about one of my other fire starters, if I could do this, and I had never thought of doing it. So, there you go. There's one other use to this fire starter. I'm going to show you that right here on this old concrete block. Now, let's say you're lost and you have to move from the position where you are to somewhere else, and you want to leave a guide on which direction you went. Well, if you had a boulder or a large rock in one of these, you can mark on the rock, the boulder, your direction of travel. Now, the reason I don't go out in the woods and do this for you is I don't want to leave a false mark in case somebody does get lost out there. But I think you get the idea. All right, let's head back inside. I want to kind of compare these two fire starters. I've shown how to make both of them on my channel, and I've demonstrated them. But we're going to start with the wax one, which we just made and just tested outside. First, let's talk about some pros of this one. It's cheap to make. It's relatively easy to make. It's waterproof. It can be used to make a waypoint marker like I did on that concrete block. So it can be used basically like a big crayon, okay? Cons. It's temperature sensitive. Now, what do I mean by that? If you have a bag of these in your backpack and you leave your backpack in your car and it's a hot summer day and your car gets really hot, that bag might turn into one big lump of wax as they melt together. To me, that's the biggest problem with this type of fire starter. Does that mean that it's a bad fire starter? No. It just means you need to be aware of that if you use it. Let's talk about the Vaseline style fire starter. Pros: it's cheap to make. It's waterproof. And in a pinch, you can open that up and use it as a lip balm, protect a scab, or a water barrier for a wound or small cut, restore dry hands, or soothe irritated skin. Yes, because it has Vaseline, i.e. petroleum jelly in there, it has more uses than just a fire starter. Cons. The biggest con to the Vaseline fire starter like I have here in its little carrier is it's more involved to make. There's more to it, you know. So depending on if you want to make these fire starters and which ones you want to carry for whatever reasons, that's really up to you. I'm just trying to illustrate the differences between the two and let you decide. Me, I actually carry both. The wax ones I tend to keep separated just in case they get hot and they melt together, as previously stated. But that's all I got to say about that. Make them, don't make them. Carry them with you, don't carry them. That's all up to you. And I will catch you all later on, out in those woods over there. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.